sweetie. So we need to talk about your grades, young lady. Oh, really? You do need math in the real world. Am I having this conversation with you? Yeah. Excuse me, who are you talking to? Wow. Not another word. Don't you dare. Don't.
Good to be with you tonight. Guys, I have a question for you to start. Here's the question. Have you ever asked a woman when she was due and she wasn't? Yeah. I think on average, most guys do this exactly one time. Unfortunately, I am above average. It's a very uncomfortable position to be in. You think, me and my big mouth. I went on a skiing trip with my brothers last weekend. The three of us were getting our skis, getting handed out to us. There was some young, I'll call him a punk kid, handing out the skis. And he looked at the three of us. And he said, "Are you guys brothers?" I said, "Yeah, we are." And he said, "Man, I hope when I'm old, my brothers and I go on ski trips like that." I said, "You mean 35? Is that what you mean?" And I thought, like he said something, then I felt like I had to say something back. I'm like, me and my big mouth, which of course is the title of this series, Me and My Big Mouth. Would you all say that out loud, the title of the series with me? Let's say it. Me and my big mouth. And it's important to remember this isn't about your husband's big mouth or your wife's big mouth or your sons or your daughters, your moms or your boyfriends or anyone else's. This is about us, about you and yours, me and mine. And so even a couple of weeks ago when I started this, I had you say the me and the my extra strong, just so we make sure we're not talking about the person sitting next to us. We're talking about ourselves. Let's do that again. The me and the my really strong. Here we go. Me and my big mouth. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I started this with 6 very important words from James. James wrote one section of the Bible, and the words were quick to listen, slow to speak. And I gave you some hand actions with it. We're going to practice it one more time. I know Jamie did a little bit with you last week. Would you all grab your fists, pull them inside? If you're brand new tonight, no problem. You can go back and catch up with the messages online, but you'll catch on to this very quickly. We throw our hands out and we say, quick to listen, slow to speak. One more time. Quick to listen, slow to speak. And the idea is that we need to be a little bit patient when we're listening. Now, that was what James said in James chapter 1 a couple of weeks ago. Last week, Jamie was teaching from Paul, who said very similar things with his words, but he was focused on our words as a construction site, the idea that you actually could build one another up with the powerful words. And today, I'm going to return to James because James returns to this message about our mouths and our tongues in James chapter 3. Now, I'll remind you, James was the little brother of Jesus. If you've never read the Bible before and you thought, it's probably too complicated, I don't know where I would start, you should give it a shot, and you should start with James, this, as you're seeing in this passage. It's so practical. It's not that difficult to understand. He illustrates things so you can get it. It's a great place to start. And so we're going to be in James chapter 3 today, and he's just going to build on the message that he already had about our mouths. And this is how he starts. He says, we all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. So he's setting a vision for us. He's like, I don't know, maybe that's possible. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say. So, I like to have kind of the all skate, the all play. I want to see if you're listening, if you'll participate with me. Show of hands, who in the room is never at fault in what they say? Put your hands up. Put them up super high. Super high. Keep them up. All right. I want you all to look around this room right now and look at the perfect people back in that corner of the room over there. I see no one over here, right? No one over here. And you're wrong, just so you know. That's my most gentle way to say it. None of us, of course, are perfect in what we say. It's interesting. James would observe this because his little brother or his big brother actually was. Right? The one who is perfect in what he said made his whole life perfect. But for the rest of us, we can never live up to that. We will never master our mouths. We never have, and we never will. The best, actually, that we can hope to do is to mitigate what comes out of our mouths. And the way that you and I would mitigate it would be to say, you know what? I got to be careful. So I'm going to be quick to listen. And I'm going to be slow to speak so that I can mitigate what comes out of my mouth. The whole idea here is that my words and your words, of course, are volatile. They're out of control a little bit. You can't put an entire lid on what you're going to say. Later on in this passage, James is going to say that your tongue is untamable. It's going to go crazy. So the best that you can hope for is to pause a little bit. And remember what that meant. Quick to listen means be eager to listen. Try to understand. Take the learning posture. Ask some questions. Be curious. Soak in as much as you can. And then be slow to speak. And slow actually means late to speak. Let the moment pass. In very volatile situations, one of the best things you can do is back away slowly. But when we get engaged, when we go on the back and forth, when it gets hot, it's volatile. But the problem is, it's not just that our words are volatile, it's that our words are powerful. Human language, the words that were spoken to you, the words that were spoken over you, the words that were spoken about you, they've shaped how you see yourself. Sometimes the words that were spoken about you when you weren't present and you learned they were said later shaped you more than anything else. You didn't have to even be in the room when the words were spoken about you, but the words shaped you. They literally transform our lives. There are kids and teenagers who had no confidence, and then someone spoke words over them, spoke words to them, spoke words about them, and they went from having no confidence to having confidence. And there are kids and teenagers and young people who had confidence, but then someone spoke words to them and spoke words over them and spoke words about them, and they went from having confidence to having no confidence. It shaped their entire identity. And we have to remember that our words to one another, they really carry weight. They shape things. So we got to be careful about me and my big mouth. Now, a couple of summers ago, I did a series. It was called The Weight of Our Words. And I think it's a good way to picture it because not all words carry the same weight. And as we're deciding what we're going to let come out of our mouth, we should gauge what weight our words have so we know what impact they will have when they land. We can acknowledge a couple of things. Negative words weigh more than positive words. Every study that's ever been done on human communication says essentially the same thing, that it takes about 5 times as many positive and encouraging and affirming statements to someone to make up for one negative or critical statement to someone. Because negative words weigh more. The greatest gift I have ever received in my life, the greatest gift, is this gift. I think I've shown it to you once before. I'll be happy to show it to you again. A few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, my wife and kids got together, and this, of course, looks like a pill bottle, but inside each one of those pills, my wife and kids wrote encouraging things to me, things they saw in me, things they appreciated about me, and they rolled them up on little pieces of paper, and they put them in that pill bottle. And I keep this pill bottle on my desk, and on most days, I open one of them up to read it. I'm now rereading them, of course. But think about this. My wife, I mean, we all know my kids didn't start this, right? My wife's the one's like, all right, kids, let's do this for Father's Day, right? My oldest son was in the Marines while this was going on. He was deployed in the Middle East, and he typed out words, and my wife printed them out and cut them up, and she put them in this pill bottle. My youngest son was 3 years old at the time, and she had conversations with him. What do you think about Dad? And she wrote those down, and I go, now here's the thing. There's 100 pills in this bottle. All I need to do is get one really nasty email. They just don't weigh the same. Your negative words weigh more. The source of the words weigh more. Some of you are in positions where your words weigh more. I'm a boss. The boss's words always weigh more. I can't walk down our staff hallway the same way someone else can walk down our staff hallway and say the same things. My words weigh more, and sometimes yours do too. If you're in a position of authority, like a judge or a teacher or a principal or a lawyer or a professional, you're a boss, your words weigh more. Let's say your words weigh 200 pounds. But your words don't weigh as much as a mom's words weigh. A mom's words weigh like 500 pounds. And I don't know why this is, and I honestly don't love it, but I'll tell you this. My experience is that dad's words weigh the most of all, perhaps 1,000 pounds. I have a friend who's a pastor who's telling me about a conversation that he had with a young woman in his church. He was so impressed. This woman had been through a lot. She had made some mistakes. She had recovered. She had acknowledged the wrongs. She had set the course. She was now a single mom. But oh my goodness, she was one foot in front of the other, doing the hard things, building out a life. And he went to her and he said, I just wanted to encourage her. My wife and I went to her to encourage her. And he said, I just want you to know how proud I am of you. How much discipline it must take, how hard it must be, how I see you being faithful and working through this. And I was just trying to encourage her. And I looked her in the eye and I said these things. And she looked back at me and she said, wish my dad would say that. Thank you, Pastor. Your words mean something. They just don't mean as much as my dad's words would mean to me right now. So when you think about how much your words weigh, how powerful they are, you have to think about the position that you're in as it's related to the person that you are speaking to. And then maybe our worst calculation of all with the weight of our words is that we use careless words, we use we use harmful and hurtful words that truly hurt somebody. And then after we see that we've hurt somebody, we feel bad about it. We say we're sorry, and we expect them to get over it like that. As if the first things we said on this side of the scale should be absolutely wiped out because we apologized. But that is not the way words work. And if you've ever been in a situation where you start to say, well, I said I'm sorry, then you don't understand the weight and the power, the volatility of our words. Now, James is going to drive at this hard because he wants us to understand how disproportionately influential our mouths, our tongues, and our words are as it pertains to the direction and the health of our life. So he's going to give us a few illustrations here. He says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. I don't know if any of you had kids who loved horses. My daughter, for whatever reason, she just loves horses. You know, we'd go on vacation, and every time we'd go on vacation, she'd be like, is there somewhere we can do a trail ride? She wants to ride horses. We would send her to a horse camp once when she was younger. It's just this fascination. And when she was really little, I would get kind of scared because, you know, she's like 3 or 4 years old. Do you know horses weigh like 1,000 pounds? And my daughter, like, her legs weren't even big enough to kind of wrap around the horse. It's like, these were her legs, you know? And I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so small, the horse is so big. And my wife, who knows a little more about horses than I do, said, no problem. They have a bit that's in the mouth of a horse. And all you have to do is put that little bit, in the mouth of a big horse, and you have control over the whole horse. Small bit, big horse, disproportional influence. The small part controls the whole thing. James says, or take ships as an example. Although they are large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants it to go. Now, you might be picturing modern ships, but of course, James was picturing first century ships. These were massive ships. The ships in his day were probably the largest structures that anyone would ever see. They would haul enormous amounts of cargo, hundreds of people. I have a picture of one. It's a ship like this, and it's all steered by this very small rudder. Small rudder, big ship. Disproportional influence. The small rudder controls the whole thing. Likewise, James says, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Now, I'm not going to show you a picture of a tongue. I think tongues are gross. Maybe you do too. But you won't be surprised to learn this. Your tongue has 8 muscles in it. Your body has over 800 muscles in it. And yet, those 8 muscles in your tongue, they never get tired. They never get tired. And what's James saying? He's saying small tongue, big life, disproportionate influence. The tongue controls the whole thing. One more example. He says, or consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. Now, we don't have to imagine this, right? Because we watch the news, and very recently on the news, we get pictures like this of the forest fires in California, now in South Carolina. And here's James' point. It'll work. This small spark is what turns into that. Small spark, big forest fire, disproportional influence. This, if untamed, can do all of that. And he's saying this about our words. He goes on. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body and sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Now, maybe he's exaggerating. Maybe he's using a little hyperbole to try to get our attention, but he's making his point, isn't he? That you and I, first, to go to the last line first, to say, hey, what's going to get our tongue in the wrong spot? Well, the influence of hell, actually. And he's not talking about the eternal destruction that does await some people for all of eternity. He's talking about where the evil one lives, the influence the evil one would love to have on us. That comes from hell. If he can get a hold of your tongue, he can get a hold of your whole life. And he's not going to get a hold of your whole life to encourage other people. He's going to get a hold of your tongue to tear down, to burn down everything around you. And we know this, right? See, actually, I think we have to be really, really careful in our world today. Because in our world today, people use words carelessly. In our dialogue, politics, but not just politics. How does someone hook you to watch a YouTube video? They'll say something like this. They're going to say exactly what this says. I'll tell you, this is what my algorithm does, okay? Christian destroys an atheist in the debate. Destroys. Is that what we're trying to do? Well, that's what the tongue can do. And some of us get kind of hyped and kind of proud and kind of excited about laughing at the dialogue that just lets words fly when it tears down everything around us. And you know this because the words that are going back and forth between you and your boyfriend, the words that are going back and forth between you and your wife, they're going to scorch your relationship. Wars start with words. If we do not pay attention to the words that we say to one another, whole countries, nations have been scorched because of the power of words. Children have things said to them, spoken over them, said about them, and entire identities of children have been scorched by the power of words. And it would be worthwhile for us to step back and say, wow, small part of the body, big influence. I want to be careful about that. So, if you've been around here for a while, you know there's a kind of a theory that is rooted in the scriptures that I'm on kind of a lifelong campaign about. And it is the idea that your relationships are what defines your life. I usually say it's something like this, and I don't ever want you to miss this, because I think if you think about it, you'll resonate so deeply and it will change the way that you live. That God is relational. You may not have perceived him that way, but that is the accurate way to perceive him. That he loves you and knows you and wants to be loved and known by you. And when he created us to be primarily relational beings. So we like achieving things. We like having money. We like having good jobs. We like lots of things. But But at the pinnacle of the human experience is our relational experience. And what it means is when your relationships are good, your life is good. You could have no money. You could have a terrible job. You could have a car that doesn't start half the time. But if you have a wife who loves you, if you have kids who want to be with you, if you have good friends, life's still good. And of course, the opposite's true also, that if you have a great job, lots of money, a car that starts, but you have a marriage that fell apart, kids who don't want to hang out with you, and you don't have any friends, life isn't good. This is the idea. Relationships define your life. And then James adds this, and the words we use define our relationships. And so I think the theory here is words define our relationships, relationships define your life. That means your words define your life. And this is so significant because the way your relationships are shaped with the people who love you the most are by what comes out of your mouth. I had this thing for a number of years, kind of an idea of how we should treat the guys who we help start new churches. A lot of you know that we love to help start new churches. We've started more than 70 churches. Those have started more than 700 churches. It's amazing. We interact with people who are starting churches all the time, and we give them financial support. But I tell our teams, we want to also give them encouragement. And so I told our teams once, here's how we're going to do it. Every time we talk to one of our church planters who are heroes to us, guys starting new churches, ladies starting new churches, I want us to say 80% of our words will be encouragement, affirmation, cheering them on, noting something that they've done well. 15% of our words can be advice. You know, we've seen a lot of this, and so we know things about starting new churches. We should not hold back when we could offer a piece of advice. When we give advice, they can take it or leave it. And then 5% of our words should be accountability, because you have to have accountability. And for me, the accountability is always, I'm not holding you accountable to what I told you should do. I'm holding you accountable to what you said you should do. But the grid is 4 out of every 5 sentences out of our mouth will be encouragement. I mean, these guys have risked it all. They could have gone to a church and got a paycheck. They went where there was no church with no people and tried to start something out of nothing. Well, I was telling my men's group about that once, and as we were talking about it, we thought, that wouldn't be a bad grid for our marriages, would it? What if with our wives, 80% of our words were encouragement? It was noting something beautiful, something good about her. It was an affirmation of some sort. 80%, 4 out of every 5 sentences. And of course, at times we would speak up and give some advice. And 5% of the time it would be accountability. Again, not to what I want her to do, but what she said she was going to do. And then we thought, well, if that would work with our wives, what if we did that with our kids? Can you imagine? 4 out of every 5 sentences out of your mouth to your kids are encouragement, they're affirmation, they're leading them to see something you see in them that will gain their confidence, that will grow their trust in God, not diminish it. And of course, there's 15% advice and 5% accountability. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, man, we're in a tough season. I got to give accountability all the time, and I'm the parent. I have to do that. Yes, you do have to do that. It's actually just a reminder that you're going to have to figure out all kinds of ways to bring affirmation and encouragement so that 4 out of your 5 sentences can still be encouragement, even when you have to give a lot of accountability. Now, that might seem crazy to you, but I'm telling you, our words define our relationships, and our relationships define our lives. Here's how James wraps it up. All kinds of animals are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. This is in the first century. They were figuring out how to domesticate some animals. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is restless evil, full of deadly poison. He's telling us that your mouth is actually untamable. You will not conquer it. You will not master it. You can only hope to mitigate it. And your best hopes of mitigating the horrible things from coming out of your mouth are to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Your mouth deserves like an untamed dog. It should say, beware of mouth. But it's not that other people need to be aware of your mouth. It's that you need to be aware of your mouth. We should have placards, shouldn't we have? Flammable. Hazardous materials. And it should tell us that that's what could come out of our mouths. Maybe it should come with a warning label. And the warning label simply should say, quick to listen, slow to speak. Can I just give you an example myself of how powerful, how obvious this is? I stood on this platform and done hundreds and hundreds of messages. I've spoken millions of words over 20 plus years. And I got to tell you, I'm grateful for what God has done through it. to see lives that are shaped, to see things that his word does, his spirit does out of the preparation that we do. It's just amazing to me. I've said so many words. And over 20 years, you gain a reputation. You build some trust. But right now, in the next 2 minutes, I could let words come out of my mouth that are so ruinous, so hazardous, so wrong, that it would be the end of my ministry. It could happen. Think about that. 20 years to build something and 2 minutes to destroy it. And if our elders didn't walk up here while I was talking and yank me off the stage, I can guarantee you they would be up here next weekend and they would say something like, so you remember Greg? You may have been here and heard what he said last week. He will not be back. He said he was sorry. We're glad that he's sorry, but he will not be back. This is the disproportionate influence that our mouths have. Now, this last part of the passage is actually written just to followers of Jesus. The rest of this is good for all of us, right? Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, it's good for you. But for those of us who are followers of Jesus, get this. With the tongue, we praise our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, Christians, this should not be. And of course, he's just telling you about your day, maybe your day today. You sang some praises to God. Maybe you took communion and you thanked God for his forgiveness and his grace in your life. But the other parts of today, you denigrated somebody. You talked bad about them. You cursed them. You said something to them. It might have been at work today. It might have been at home today. It might have been in the car on the way here. Followers of Jesus, this should not be. How in the world can you construct your life in such a way that praises God, and then for all the places God put his image in every human being, you choose with one of those human beings to denigrate them? Can't be that way. And so this is a calling that we all have, especially the followers of Jesus, to understand the power of our words. And maybe the right way to wrap this up today is just to say, let's get this right even when we've been wrong in the past. Dads, our words weigh more. And if you've said harmful, hurtful, or careless things to your kids, I think today's the day you decide, now I need to go to them and say, I'm sorry. But I can't say I'm sorry and be dismissive and ask them to be right back there with me. I have to look them in the eye and say, hey, I understand what I said, and honestly, I'm trying to understand the hell that probably put you through. It maybe even shaped your life in some ways that I never meant to, and it was my fault. Could I start today in a reset, and you can make me prove myself over time to really bring you the words you need in your life to your son or your daughter. Kids, adults, we all have parents, right? For those of us who have parents who are living, I don't know if you ever thought about the words you say to your parents, whether you're 40 or whether you're 14. The words you say to your parents, they don't bounce off your parents, they land with your parents. And some of us have said hurtful things, harmful things, careless things to our parents. And of course, parents think they're just supposed to absorb it, so they may not even try to react at all. But I'm just saying to you, if you've ever said words to your parents, no matter how old you are, that denigrated them, if you said words about them that denigrated them, today would be a great day to go to them and say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, listen, that wasn't right. It wasn't right. I was being careless. I actually said something that was totally wrong. I see your life, and it's not what I said about you. And go say some words to your parents that will land in a way that encourages them. Wives, I know your husbands, guys, we act tough. We never want to appear weak to anybody. But you understand, you hold his ego in your hands. Your words shape his life, how he thinks about himself, how he carries himself. And just as I've encouraged husbands to give 80% encouragement to their wives, I will say to you, please, you will reshape your husband into who you want him to be by speaking words of life and encouragement and apologizing for daggers that you've thrown at him, poison that you've brought to him. And guys, with our wives, the same thing, but even more broadly, just with women, it's still way too frequent that guys, maybe you, talk about people who God has created in his image in ways that do not honor them. Or perhaps we're in settings and we're not participating, but we're hearing it. And I'm calling on you right now, guys, to be a real man, to speak up, to use your words for good and for honor and for nobility and for nothing else. To understand the power of our words to destroy, to scorch, and to burn, but also to bring life. Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.